Take me back to the start, Kevin, when you first learned of Owen and this case. Take us back to the beginning moments of how this all started happening and this trajectory that you started on.
Okay, basically what happened is, of course, the homicide was found by the fellow from the fire department, called it in, and basically it involved, a battery, and it involved the subsequent murder of Miss Warden. At the time, what we did is we had a crime analysis unit, and what they would do is we asked that all the cases be pulled on any open burglaries, where there was a battery that occurred, and start pulling those cases. Because of the nature of the homicide in the Warden case involving sexual activity with the victim, we kept a separate sex offender mug book down at the PD, and we had Al Doucette was the FAU police officer that contacted a student over there who Owen exposed himself to, and she agreed to do a sketch, and she did a kind of a rough sketch of the person that was involved in that, the male that was involved in that, and when that came, I met with Doucette, and so what I did is I went through our sex offender book because he was looking to make a lineup for the girl, and I just, to be honest with you, stroke of luck, picked him, and then gave it to Doucette. We made a lineup for him. He went back to FAU, and she positively identified him. So that's basically how the ball started rolling on him. And of course, now we had the homicide, and we had there was a sexual nature to the homicide. Where Miss Warden was killed was a residence, which is not far from FAU. It's kind of a stone's throw, from FAU. So it was basically when he got identified by the person over at FAU, we put out a bulletin for him, basically for that incident, and he had a warrant for loitering and prowling. And he had, when we ran him through the computer, he had some sex offense arrests, so we kind of focused on him at the point that he was active in the area within a few blocks of where the homicide was. He lived not too far from the homicide on the other side of the tracks. So we just started compiling this, and like I said to you before, we just couldn't eliminate him. And because of the nature of the crime, being not a I know you and I have an argument with you and you wind up dead or something like that. It was a stranger on stranger type crime, which that was the best we had at the time to follow, and it worked out.
This was 1984.
Right.
Crimes of this nature must have been appalling at that time in terms of just, they're appalling in nature at any time, but at that point in time, you didn't have these types of crimes happening.
No, we were very fortunate as a police department. We didn't have the crimes, such as the violent crime like that, like other jurisdictions did. And so it was a shock to the community, and when it came on the heels of Delray's homicide that they were investigating, it kind of, I guess, put fear in the community.
Talk about the Slattery case too, because I know the minute Owen became a figure of a suspect for you, you all were working very closely with Detective Rick Lincoln.
Right.
And talk about the similarities of the cases and what you all did and how you all investigated to ultimately bring Owen into custody.
Okay, well, originally when I was at the homicide scene, I received a call from Rick Lincoln, and he was asking, what we had down there, because we're a neighboring community. And so I filled him in a little bit, and I didn't know too much about the Slattery case, only what pretty much we read in the papers. And so he filled me in on some of the facts of the Slattery case.
The cord, can you leave the cord on ground? I see it in the
That's okay.
I didn't want to kick it.
That's okay. That's okay. You can pick up. So you saw you started communicating with Rick right away
from the scene of the homicide, and he gave me some of the specifics on the Slattery homicide, and he subsequently assigned a couple of detectives to come down and meet with us and we would sit down and go over the Slattery homicide and then Warden's homicide, and that's where we came up with all these similarities.
What were the similarities?
The fact that he checked out the house, before going in and stuff. He circled the houses and stuff. On Slattery's case, as you know. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
There was the screen was cut, even though there was a knife used in the Slattery homicide. The fact that he was basically, in Owen's words, scoping out the Warden house, and he wore some socks on his hands as not to leave prints when he was trying these windows and stuff. So we thought it was similar enough to just kind of work our way through our homicide and keep, and Delray would help us along, and we just exchanged information. Everything we found out, we put to, and we couldn't eliminate him from Delray's case because the two girls in the house, the two kids in the Helms house, were left untouched. They were both in the bedrooms when this was going on. That was a big factor, was the fact that it was almost similar. You have a female victim, and you have her two children that were left alone, not harmed at all. And the same way with in the Helms residence, Karen was she was babysitting the two kids, and they were in bed when it happened. So you grab anything.
Yeah. So we spoke about the fact right around that he was caught and
right.
that you all got him, and once you brought him into custody. Take us from that point. Now you have what I would consider, or what you would consider, your prime suspect at that point, I would assume.
Yes.
In custody, you've got him. Take us from that point now, and how did this case unfold from that?
Well, after we got him into custody for the warrants, the loitering and prowling warrant that was out for him, and I believe it was an attempted burglary that he had on him that he was wanted for. We brought him down to the RPD, Boca PD, put him in an interview room, and I went up to where his brother lived up on Northeast 45th Street, and interviewed his brother to get a background on Owen, Duane, where he lived, everything, that he could come up with. And his brother's name is Mitchell, and he was very cooperative. Let us look around the apartment, and obviously Owen wasn't there, and no belongings were found there. So when I went back to the PD, I had a pretty good outline of where he came from, when they got down here to Florida, his police his record, criminal record, so on and so forth. And when I started talking to him about Dana Brown, whose ID he showed Officer Petracco and showed us at the scene down where we were earlier, and there was no doubt that that was him, and so on and so forth. And once we got to that point, he was a different character. It was like once he knew you had him pretty good, he gave it up. So he gave up the Dover Street case, which is where he was caught going through a window where a female was sleeping right underneath the window, and her brother heard the commotion, and he came out, and subsequently we showed them a photo lineup, and they picked him out as well. So we knew he was active. He's not too far from Boca, not too far from the Helms house. Rode a bike all over for his transportation. So from there, we charged him with the Dover Street burglary, the warrants, and shipped him up to county jail, and on those charges. We subsequently learned through Mitchell Owen that the false ID he showed us, the military ID in the name of Dana Brown, we found out who Dana Brown was. And so we contacted the federal authorities, the FBI, and basically they filed charges on him to put a hold on him because he was in there on 2, I think, third-degree felonies at the time. And the loitering and prowling was a misdemeanor. So we pretty much we wanted him held in there, and you can only do so much. We didn't want him to get released OR because the case was getting stronger and stronger as we went along.
And you knew he was your prime suspect, but yet he was wanted on all these other crimes, and that's what you ended up getting him on, essentially, right?
Well, that's he would have been picked up anyway because of the warrants. But yeah, the warrants were good. It was a legitimate arrest for the warrant, and he would have been taken into custody no matter what.
No matter what.
Yeah.
On those other crimes.
On
right?
those other ones, yeah.
So as you started strengthening your case again in the Warden case, what were the key points? You started developing a relationship with him, and you said he was able to talk to you more comfortably than other detectives. Can you go through that?
Right. Well, at the time when I questioned him, he told me what happened up at Dover Street and how he got away from the cops, and he left a pair of sneakers on the seawall. He jumped in the water and swam down to the intercoastal, and I guess there's a wooded area down there where he stayed the rest of the night until, all the cops cleared. And I told him that, I said, well, where's your sneakers? And he said, basically, I threw them out or got rid of them or whatever the case may be. I says, what if I told you we had the sneakers? And he looked at me and he says, yeah, I was going to bring them up to county and burn them up. And the importance about those sneakers, from talking to Delray, they had a sneaker print like in the garden area that was, I can't say identical, but it was similar pattern as to the sneakers we found on the seawall. Apparently the owner of the house saw these, they knew there was a commotion and stuff, happened to call the cops and says, unfortunately the cop vouches the sneakers. So yeah, he was pretty impressed with that. So the following day he contacted, I think it was the following day, he contacted Mark Woods and wanted him to come up to county jail to talk to him because he knew Mark. I think Mark had charged him with a couple of cases in Delray. And because of the homicide being involved, our homicide, I went with him because I already developed somewhat of a rapport with him. And he was impressed that we got his sneakers and impressed in, a couple of different things. And so I went up to take part in some of the interviews, and that's where we started, where he would call us. We'd run up there and stuff, and he would come close to confessing to these other string of crimes, but just would stop, right at the end before committing himself. But then eventually, we wound up getting some confessions on other serious cases.
And when was the Warden case? When did you finally seal that for a confession from him?
That was on the 21st of June. What we did is he offered to talk about it if we brought his brother up to visit with him because he knew he was going away, or at least that's what he was under the impression of. And we brought his brother up, did what he wanted and stuff like that, and he still wouldn't cop or admit. So anyway, we on the 21st we went up and saw Lieutenant Livingston at the time read him a PC affidavit I prepared for the homicide, and he basically listened to it and stuff. And when Livingston was done with that, then I went in with him, read him his rights again, and basically spoke to him about talking about the crime and so on and so forth. He was asking questions, and one of the questions he asked was, if you read the case, there was a fingerprint found on a book that was checked out of the Boca Library, and the Miss Charles' Daughter was the name of the book. And when Georgianna was asleep, before she went to sleep, I guess she was reading the book, and the book was put, just laid on the bed next to her. And he said, Bob Lynn, the crime scene tech at the time, obtained one print from the corner of the page and identified it as Owen. So that was in the PC affidavit. So he just started asking, where was the print? Thinking we were lying, And I said, well, we can't lie on an affidavit. And he's thinking, and you can see the wheels turning and stuff. So he kind of bring you off course talking about something else, and then we bring him right back to the homicide. And in the middle of the interview with him, you could see him thinking, like, is he not telling the truth, or to me he was reliving the crime in his head, thinking, where did I leave a print? Because he had socks on his hands when he broke in, and right in the mid-sentence, as we moved on from that, he says the print was on the book. I said, what do you mean the print was on the book? He says, that's the only place I went without covering on his hands, because what he had done when he broke in is he took his socks off, put them on his hands, and was trying all the windows, because we saw all the white streaks from the chalk on the house, on the windows where he was trying to get in. He even went in through the garage, like here, to get in, but she had that lock, and she had everything locked, But once he said that, then it was like, tell me. And what you do is you basically, you don't judge, you listen. And eventually he went down, through certain other aspects of the crime that only he would know. We talked about when we did the original crime scene search, it included, and you'll see it later on, the area from 35th Street to 40th Street. There was a vacant field over there. So we had a group of police officers search that field, and that's where we found his shorts, we found his socks, and we found a washcloth that had the rose pattern on it, which matched the pattern in the Warden house.
So you had a lot going there. As you speak about this, we were talking about his state of mind, and it was almost as if he was trying to play detective with you all to try and solve this, if you will, to try and get you all to solve it and bait you all a little bit. How was that state of mind? What was the relationship like there?
Well, he bragged about taking criminal. He said he wanted to become a policeman at one time, but then he got arrested and he couldn't do that. Then he said he went to community college and went through law enforcement classes and stuff. So he basically fancied himself that he knew what he was doing and he was not going to do anything to get himself caught. And but once you proved the case to him and didn't lie to him on something he would know would be a lie, he would pretty much give it up. And I think on a couple of them he said, you really got me good on this one, and then, talk about it. It was a cat and mouse game, and then when we went up another time, he was getting, I think, a little nervous, so he started talking to me in the third person. What if John Doe did this? What if John Doe broke into the house and murdered the woman? What would the charge be? So of course I told him what the charge would be. He said, what if John Doe broke into the house and the woman came out with a knife? So he knew there was a knife in the room, which there was. Well, if John Doe pled guilty, could he ask to go to a psychiatric hospital or, up North Hospital or something like that? And I said, well, that's not up to us and stuff. So he was weighing his options of whether he wanted to talk or not. And I think he believed that there was a print because he was pretty annoyed at that when he found out, because he came out, just uttered it out. It was on the book. And of course, we already had gone to the library, got the library card or whatever on who took out books when. And of course, during one of the other interviews, it seemed like a stupid question at the time, but it just kind of asked him, I said, hey, you ever go to the Boca Library and, commit any crimes, expose yourself down there? He says, no. I said, did you ever check out a book by this? No. Never been there, never checked out a book and stuff like that, which kind of eliminated him from a defense that, hey, I had that book out, no wonder my prints are all over it. So we kind of closed that in before he started talking about it.
Yeah. When you knew you had that confession from him, what went through your mind at that point?
Well, Rick was up there at the time, and I'm thinking, well, hit him with flattery. Going in now that he's given our case up, and believed basically he was had on that case. That was pretty much the last chance that probably he was going to talk to the cops, because I'm sure once he got an attorney, that would be it. So Rick went in and interviewed him, and he subsequently, copped to the, or admitted to the splattering homicide. Yeah.
And then at that point, take us through the trial. You had a long time from that point, subsequent years through the trials.
Okay, well, and the other thing about Owen, one corollary to that is we asked him about the sneakers again on the slattery homicide. And on the bed where Miss Warden was laid on the bed there, all down the sheets were footprints. And there were those little round nubbies, almost like spikes the kids wear to play soccer or something. And because I wanted those sneakers, and I said, "Where's the sneakers?" And he says, "I tore them up." And I said, "Well, draw me the pattern at the bottom of the sneakers." And he could have drew arrows. He could have drew anything just to, so I'd say, "Well, no, that's not him," because But he drew the same pattern on the bottom of his sneakers, so I know he threw them away.
Yeah.
But as long as he knew you would do something, or that you kept your word about something, he would basically come forward with the information he had. So eventually we charged him with, I believe, 3 or 4 attempted murder cases where women were battered, and of course Delray charged him with the slattery case. And then we went through a series of trials. He filed his defense attorneys, good attorneys, they filed certain appeals about the Miranda in the slattery case, so on and so forth. We didn't have really any challenges to ours other than a normal hearing to suppress evidence no matter what, and I took part in, I think it was a week-long motion to suppress on our statements. He eventually, I think a couple of years later, sued me and a couple of the other investigators in civil court for just mental anguish, illegal arrest, prisoner of war tactics. He didn't specify what that was. And eventually that suit was thrown out.
Yeah. As this case has evolved over the years, and you've looked at it and thought about it, and now really the culmination of it is coming to an end, with his death warrant that's been signed at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's still in question, but knowing that there's finality to this, how are you looking at the execution? How are you looking at the end of this case as it comes before us?
Well, I never answered that question. How can I put this? I don't want to say it's, how do I put this? They wanted to ask me that, the defense wanted to ask me that in the stand, because the big thing was our relationship that I had with Owen. And all I can say to that is it met the requirements for the death penalty. Judge Berg pronounced the sentence on him. And it's about the family, not the cops.
When you see this case and over your years in law enforcement, especially with Boca, is this one that stands out to you?
Oh yeah.
The case that you'll always remember.
Yeah. It was again, Boca's very fortunate. We never had, we've gone years without a homicide, and again, I think it was when it was tethered with the slattery homicide. There's 2 towns, close together. Delray had a few more homicides than us, maybe each year. But it scared the community. I think there was, I don't know how many articles written about it, about people not wanting to have their kids babysit, so on and so forth. I think when we spoke to the FBI and gave them facts, because we called them to ask them, do they have any hints on where we should go? How do we question this guy? What tactics do we use? So on and so forth. And they gave a list of tactics to use. You know, there's certain things you can do, which I'll explain to you later. You use that, but we were way past that with him.
Right.
He was a different, in their opinion, in our opinion, my opinion, there may be more homicides out there. It's kind of hard to believe. It just started with, you know, with Karen Slattery, because he moved around a lot. We traced his movements all over the place. We had Colorado out here talking to him because there was an incident out in Colorado. And he was the beginning, in my opinion, of a serial killer, because you just don't pick out people like that. And when you talk to him, he described what he would do when he went out to talk to, he called it, he was going out on maneuvers. And he explained that whole deal about going out and moving. He was a prowler, no relation to any of the victims, was prowling the neighborhoods, looking into windows, so on and so forth. And he would have killed again, no doubt, because he got away with it for so long.
How long did he really get away with it in terms of the years that we're talking when you?
Well, he was arrested in the same, you know, back in '84
Right.
when we had him and stuff. And so what he did then, as opposed to being so slick during the interviews and trying to get you off track with the interviews and stuff, and find out as much as you can, because one of the tactics some of these guys will do, or some of the defense to his confession would be, I spoon-fed him all the facts. So he was just regurgitating, you know, what I had given him. That, you know, we basically forced the confession that way, which was, you know, not true. So what he did is, once he was charged, he turned from trying to get us off the homicide and so on and so forth. And now that he's arrested, he became a jailhouse lawyer, so to speak. And as a matter of fact, the lawsuit he filed against myself and a couple of the other detectives was handwritten by him, with all the appropriate case laws or whatever he pulled out and stuff like that. So now he turned his attention against the judicial system, that he was going to, you know, basically try and get them to see his way out and, you know, suppress everything and probably be able to get released on the charges.
How do you remember this case?
Well, I think probably, well, this death warrant thing, you know, caught me by surprise, because, you know, a lot of guys worked on that case, and here it is, what is it, 84 to 2023. It was like, you know, where's the justice type of thing? You know, not that I'll give an opinion on whether he should be executed or not. If the family agreed with that, that's fine by me. But I think every once in a while, I guess it sticks out because it was so horrendous to both. So I think every once in a while, when you hear about another crime or something like that, or somebody talks about him, or they read him in the paper, they do a recap or something like that, where is he now and stuff, I think it gets people talking. So yeah, you remember it.
You remember your proximity to the case and just your involvement
Oh yeah.
in that and everything.
Yeah, it was in some respects, to be honest with you, it was good police work by Delray, by Boca, to get it. But to be honest with you, a lot of luck.
How do you think this case will be studied in years to come? And
well, I think it's like we were taught, and then I subsequently taught other younger cops, is that if somebody's breaking into houses, everybody says, oh, okay, he's a burglar, and they pigeonhole him as a burglar. If anybody does, you know, purse snatches, you know, they're just a purse snatcher. I think you can't keep a closed mind that, okay, all he does is burglaries, because we had another gentleman running around town committing sexual batteries and burglaries, and he was doing armed robberies too. So don't narrow your thinking to like, okay, just because you break in a house, that's all you do is you're a burglar. And like I say, the reason he was in that mug book, not only was he a burglar, but he was also had some sexual issues, legal issues. So you kind of go in there with a big scope. As we were told, don't put your eggs all in one basket. And like I said, my answer to that was, we ain't got nothing else.
Right.
You know, so I think the fear he put in the community was probably the big thing. And somehow, if a similar type crime, God forbid, happens, this will come up again, Owen, whether the warrant is good till the 15th or not.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Anything else you want to say?
No, it's just, it's a good case study on what you can do, because traditionally cops tend to, especially a big case like that, they tend to draw in because you want to solve your homicide, and sometimes we don't get enough information out to other agencies because it's your case. You want to keep it, you know, from stuff being released from your case, and that wasn't the case with Delray, which is a credit to Lincoln to get, you know, everybody together and share the information and stuff like that, and not step on the other agency's toes. They've not step on, you know, on our toes, because sometimes that's what happens with big cases with different agencies. You know, they become very secretive, very tight about their case.
Got it. I appreciate your time and your insight, Kevin. Thank you very much.
Yep.